to us, as having a sales first mentality is no different than having a customer first mentality. Because if you align the motives and the behaviors and the incentives of your sales force to be customer facing and to benefit your customer, then you tend to get the best of both worlds there.
And to add to that, I think one thing that's really important with the sales first is it also ensures from a startup's perspective that we would know if we fail quickly.
That's right.
Like, you don't want to build this massive platform and then
not be able to move it.
Yeah. So
that's right.
I think that worked really well in our case.
Yes.
Welcome to Growth Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Growing a fast company requires that you execute well on sales. I know you know this, but I say it because it really does matter. And it also matters how much emphasis you put on sales early in the process. Because a lot of companies think that growth comes only from having a product that is completely perfect, bug-free, and that you can, delight customers with. And I get the thinking behind that. We all want to serve our clients to the highest level. But here's the thing. If your product is so perfect and you've spent so much time to make it just so, and you have not really thought about sales, then you don't know if what you're actually creating is actually something someone wants to buy. Is it solving a real problem? Now, sales is something that I know dearly because I know that how important that is to the growth of companies. When I work with fast-growing companies, sales is one of the conversations that we have to talk about because getting that right really does unlock powers of 2 growth, 3 growth, 5 times growth in a year. Who do I talk to about sales and about growing your company? Well, I found FreightWise. They were number 2 on the Inc. list in 2019. They grew at over 30,000%. The exact number is 30,548% in 3 years. How did they get there? It's because they had the right approach to growth. They had an MVP product, and they also put sales first. We talk about that inside the conversation. What I love most about this interview is just the realness behind the 2 co-founders that I got a chance to talk to. There's a third one that wasn't able to join us, but we have Chris Cochran and Richard Hoehn. And they talked about, their approach to growth and how they think about this and their level of ownership they had across the entire time this company's been going. And they really believed in themselves. So without further ado, here's the interview with Richard and Chris. Hey guys, how are you?
Pretty good.
Great.
Glad to have you here at Growth Think Tank. I've already let our audience know a little bit about you, but I'd love for you to tell us about the story of FreightWise.
Sure. First, thank you for having us. So FreightWise is based in Brentwood, Tennessee. We're a technology company in the transportation management space. We actually combine technology around multiple modes of shipping along with services, quite a few services of gathering, collecting, and paying and settling out our clients' invoices for freight. We're a company that's been around for a little over 3 years operationally. We have been founded and started the company with Richard and I being co-founders along with Alex Rustioni, another partner of ours, about 5 years ago. We started as a bootstrapped company. We built FreightWise from the ground up with our own funding, our own resources, and our own knowledge. We actually took FreightWise with a handful of developers, anywhere between 4 to 8 developers full-time, from concept and build out to a viable first version product, and then started selling from there. And we've grown remarkably since that point. We're actually very proud of FreightWise and the team that we've built here.
Remarkably is one way to put it. I think a lot of people would say insane growth, 30,000+% in 3 years. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Really is impressive to know that a company grew that fast. And kind of what I'm here to do is to uncover some of those core principles about the way you think. So first, you said bootstrapping. Is it because you couldn't find money somewhere else that people said no, or that you just believed that, it was better to invest your own money instead of someone else's?
Yeah, well, quick answer, no, we could absolutely find funding. We've had many people approach us, and everyone from strategic investors that wanted to come in all the way to people that just wanted to provide capital in order to fund our growth forward. No, but the reason that we bootstrapped it, as we'll call it, is because we had a core belief in the team that we were putting together, the product and the talent and the technology that we had behind us. And we felt as seasoned entrepreneurs that we could really get FreightWise off the ground, and that we could grow it nicely without receiving institutional funding. So we sort of used those cards to be able to look at a better, more higher value funding round later within FreightWise if our strategy propels us forward to do so.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us, because it's not available to everyone, and they have to go bootstrapping. But you took a choice, which I really appreciate you guys sharing that with us. But also, believing in yourself to that core. I mean, that must have really taken a lot of confidence. Tell me just a little bit about that belief in yourself.
Well, I think a lot of confidence came because we've known each other a really long time. Chris has been successful with a number of other companies prior to that. We went to school together. We did business school together. We felt comfortable in the way we communicate with each other and find ways to build a product. So sometimes when you bring in seed capital right from the get-go, you also have some other opinions, maybe some strategic ways of going about spending the money, and we didn't want that.
Yes,
Well, I can appreciate that. Did I cut you off there, Chris?
Oh, I was going to add to it and say, one thing that I've always been very proud of at FreightWise is the amount of tech talent that we have and the minds and the leadership led by Richard here. When we went into it that way, one of our first meetings as we were deciding to create FreightWise, we really talked extensively about the build versus buy methodology. Do we want to build certain market-based technologies out there, or do we want to buy them and then extend them from that? We really believe that we want the control, and we want the strategy of being a technology company. We want the multiples that come from that in the marketplace too. And the only way to really get that and have that control and see the vision through is to, from the first line, control your own technology. And of course, we definitely have the right leader to do that in Richard.
I talked to a lot of logistics company over the last few years. They tend to make the Inc. list fairly frequently, but many of them don't describe themselves as a logistics or anything like that. They say they're a technology company, and I really appreciate you coming here today saying that you built it. When you think about the next step behind the decision to bootstrap, what was the real big principle that really drove you forward as you guys are where you are today?
The biggest decision we had that led us to bootstrap only for the first few years was that we had a strategy that was based around a core set of products and a core set of modes, and then extending with integrations to large common ERP platforms and order management and e-commerce platforms outside of that. With the team that we had and the funding that we had in place, we had quickly inferred that we were going to be able to do that with the funding we had. That did put a lot of pressure on technology to pull things off, not to redo budgets, not to go over in cost wise, and to really check things down. And it also propelled us to have very, very low overhead. But it was the strategy of how we started the business and the vision we had on what the first 24, 36 months would be that led us down that path. Absolutely.
No, I've always talked to leaders like yourself that had growth as a very intentional aspect of the business. So when you guys thought about the growth of the company, even before you had customer one, what were some of the things that played through your mind?
one thing that Richard and I have talked about often is healthy growth. And it's not, I don't mean healthy growth as in controlling your growth to only 20 to 30% a year, but I mean healthy growth as in contracts that are good for our business, things that are consumable from the operations side, and to put ourselves in a situation to where we are pushing the limits of what the business can achieve without putting the business in a place of imminent failure. And that's the kind of growth that we really tasked Salesforce to go find, and we tasked development to build to those functions. So not only did we just want growth, but we didn't want growth at any cost, and we didn't want to risk the business greatly in growing like we did. So I like to think that the growth was intentional, and then the type of customers and the type of projects we took on were also intentional.
Now, let's hold on there for a second. Now, healthy growth is very important, but a lot of people misunderstand what that means. It's not about just growing at 15 or 20% a year because that's controllable. Healthy growth in this context is about having the right customers. The right customers are really the critical focus of the early stage companies that I know. Too many companies have just revenue. And so they don't think about the healthy revenue. They think about just getting sales. And getting sales doesn't create the kind of partnerships you need to grow forward. And that really is highlighted in the conversation I had with Chris and Richard today. Now back to their interview. Now, did you guys follow an MVP strategy or something similar to that to get to market?
We did, yeah. So it's of course much easier to communicate with the development team and the sales team to use a certain strategy. We used MVP, the minimal viable product. However, we didn't adhere to it, strictly, of course. But absolutely, we got a product out there. We didn't just sell vaporware. We made sure the customer was taken care of, since we are dealing with monetary transactions and all that. But we left it open that we could find ways to create value for the client that they might not even know yet. So
did you use when you get this customers, get the feedback from them to make iterative improvements on the product?
Absolutely. So the design of FreightWise was, of course, shipped daily. So we deploy code on a daily basis, if not twice a day. And these changes always had to flow in, kind of thing, for sure. Yeah, we wanted to make sure a happy customer, if you react to their needs, saves you when you do have a bug here or there.
Well, I wanted to dive into one thing I was talking to you on the phone about, that because we got some context here about what business you're in and how you guys thought about the business, but you guys had a real sales first mentality. Let's uncover that a little bit. Why sales first, and exactly what did that mean to you?
Sure. Well, to us, as having a sales first mentality is no different than having a customer first mentality. Because if you align the motives and the behaviors and the incentives of your sales force to be customer facing and to benefit your customer, then you tend to get the best of both worlds there. So the reason we went with a sales first mentality was first because we had to grow the business, we had to grow the revenue, right? We are avid technology guys, but we also know if you build it, they will come does not work. You have to have great sales execution to the side of a great product as well. So we wanted to be very customer focused. We wanted to align ourselves with our customers' value points and the ROI that our customers would see. So that's why we built the company in that way.
And to add to that, I think one thing that's really important with the sales first is it also ensures, from a startup's perspective, that we would know if we fail quickly.
That's right.
Like, you don't want to build this massive platform and then
not be able to move it.
Yeah. So
that's right.
I think that worked really well in our case.
Yes.
Now, I want to make sure I understand where you were when you were really trying to push sales hard. You had already had a basic product, or had probably gone through many iterations, so you had something very tangible to sell, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. At our first client that went live, we did have a lot of the base functions that are in the product now. It's just, of course, not as extensive as it is at this time.
And you guys made a pretty quick decision to, after getting 2 or 3 clients, hey, we need to ramp up the sales execution and then build an operations team that allows us to keep up with that level of growth. I know there's more to it than that. So why don't you guys fill in the gaps?
Sure. Yeah. So once we got to that minimal viable product and we started selling, right, we started selling with the working team that we had in place. Most of the revenue and profits we rolled back in to sales as a strategy first, and then to operations second, and then of course development had to grow alongside of that. We did it in those ways because we know there are certain things on the operational side that salespeople could actually tackle themselves just with brute force. And then as more money came into the company and we were able to reinvest, we took away from sales and we put together processes and departments that actually allowed them to ramp further into their selling efforts. Our VP of Sales, Alex Rustioni, has always had a very great mind around sales execution. We make sure that we have solid ROIs to every client. So we've gone down a path that put a lot of risk on FreightWise's shoulders, but we did so in order to get the right customers in the door and to propel our growth forward.
What mistakes could you share with us along this journey? Because, it sounds pretty basic to me. You decided to bootstrap, you decided on growth, you decided to create an MVP, be agile with your development structure, and then we're going to sell the heck out of this. But what happened behind that? Give me just one or two things.
Go ahead.
Well, we've had a lot of problems, of course, too, with rapid growth. From I think the biggest mistakes happened when we didn't keep the sales team up to date on what products they were selling. So as we augmented and built out our product line, sometimes sales assumed that the trajectory would just stay the same. And that's a real tricky balance where you do want them to sell for the future. You do want them to get feedback from the customer, but all of a sudden you put a huge burden on development to keep up. That was one of the tricky ones where we're, even to this day, how do you make sure that sales is in sync with the product development team?
Yes.
On what they can sell, what's difficult, what's not. And I think we had some pretty heated discussions every so often about what was going on there.
Yeah, I think you're right. That was an ongoing challenge, education of the sales team. When I look back from my role, my viewpoint of the company, and I say what were some of the biggest problems and challenges we had. I think often in a quick growing environment, we invested a day too late into a role or an owner of a product or an owner of a team. And sometimes we created too much pain before we got better. That would have been a benefit of having more money. I believe as this thing was doubling and tripling and just going absolutely crazy through the roof, is that each time when we realized we needed an owner in a role, by the time we got the right person identified, hired, in and trained, they were already maxed out. So in some ways, our problem is just being on a treadmill of challenges that come day in and day out, and always being a day late to the fix.
Now, I really appreciate them talking about some of the mistakes that they made in this journey of fast growth, because one of the biggest issues that leaders have and companies that are not growing fast is they believe they shouldn't have mistakes or problems. So they really kind of temper themselves or really try to guard themselves and are very adverse to taking risk. Fast growth companies I've found are willing to take calculated risk, and they're willing to learn from those, and they create a culture where failure is not only tolerated, but accepted, and they're looking for places where they can fail fast and keep moving forward. Now, I really wanted to share this with you because if you really think about growing your company fast, you have to have a different relationship with failure and mistakes. And you have to see that they're not a problem. They're actually a chance for you to continue to grow. So look for those places where you can actually take more risk. So if you want to grow fast. Now back to the interview. Well, I see it the other side too. Like you could have taken the money and spent it foolishly, hiring people that you didn't need and all this extra stuff. But you guys, using your own money, you had true ownership into this. And I imagine a lot of that was translated into the team as you started to build out. They started to have more ownership into the work they were doing.
I think that we did see that. You're right. Yeah. And we saw people sacrifice for FreightWise. I mean, it's more than just Richard and I sitting here. We have a whole team behind us. And being at a fast growing startup, typically you don't get growth and margin at the same time. It would be great if you did, but you really don't. So we had people that took pay cuts on more compensation led plans to try to make more for the future. We did a lot of cutting on travel expenses. Richard and I have traveled together to large customers and split rooms and split meals on the way there. So we've pinched pennies every which way we could to make sure that we control the ownership that we have in the company, because we know that we believe that we have something here.
And maybe this is one of the big things, kind of a side comment on the bootstrapping and all that, is like, it helped quite a bit for the dev team to know that we were bootstrapping the company. Developers sometimes don't like working for high cash infusion companies, knowing that it'll go up, but then there's somebody that if they don't see the margins happening or the growth happening, they'll just cut the whole program. And all they worked for, all the ownership these developers and operations people took, just goes kaput. With us, I think a lot of our employees and our team, for that matter, really owned it too. They knew there wasn't much money. They knew that the bank account was very thin sometimes. And so it generated a pretty good team atmosphere.
It did.
Too.
I want to wrap this up with a chance for you guys to maybe speak directly to those leaders that are running fast growth companies that haven't put the emphasis on sales that you figure they should. So what would you tell someone that's like, oh, we just want to get the product just right before we really focus on sales?
I mean, I think I would counsel them that the product does need to be right. But the old saying is, if you're not embarrassed, then you waited too late. So we've always been a little bit embarrassed of the first things that we've rolled out, because we wanted to get it out. We knew it did create a little bit of value for our clients, and maybe it wasn't the value that we thought it would create long term, but we also knew we could get it there, right? Another part of my counsel would be, find clients that are open to going down that development road for you. A lot of the really great products that we put forward that are starting to separate us in the marketplace, they came from a genesis of a good account wanting to partner with us and roll forward to solve a business need of theirs. We have to check that internally, and Richard has to make the decision, is that a customization for a client only, or is that a market-based need that we can replicate and exploit from our competition? And as long as it checks those boxes, we actually have a development partner in our client that can test it, take it to the market, and we can see what's good or bad. I think that has propelled our success forward, because it's allowed us to see the impact very quickly and then to make the changes to get things just right. So that would be my counsel, is push hard on sales, focus on ROI, and then have good clients willing to walk the road with you.
I love that detail. And wrapping this up, I know one of the things that makes you guys different in the marketplace is you're not just a SaaS company or selling technology. You've been able to wrap some services around this. In parting, why was that important to you guys moving forward, is to have services with that technology?
You want to take that?
Well, I'll take a first stab at it. But if you have services and I feel like SaaS is sometimes hard to build a relationship with your client, I would say, and building services and making it more holistic, being more of an integrated partner, I guess, than just a a monthly fee is worked well for us. FreightWise.
so.
We always went for that.
Yes. And I think what Richard's saying is right on. And it's actually, in our opinion, excuse me, in our opinion, it's a new wave of what SaaS is. Where it was an application on a desktop or on a server, then it was an application online because there's business value in that. And then it was a single tenant SaaS application that you didn't have to upgrade. We could get rollouts faster. Now I see a lot of customers wanting more value than just using the application itself. And a lot of times that comes in an extension of their core business processes that will create more value and hopefully make us a more valued partner, as Richard was saying, right? So we've seen it in a handful of companies that have done really well, had amazing success, and even have gone public. Companies like ServiceSource and AppFolio and Avalara that are doing more than just the application online. That it's also an outsourcing play of certain very niche tasks within their customers. And that's very much who we are from a strategy standpoint. We started being that, and we're going to keep going down that road because there's extra value in that for the customers that's there in the market for us to capitalize on.
Chris, Richard, thank you for being here at Growth Think Tank, and thank you for sharing the story of FreightWise and your insane growth to over 30,000%, number 2 on the Inc. list this year. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us.
Fantastic interview. Really love the fact that we really uncovered how they got to the core basis of the company, how much belief they had in themselves so that they didn't have to take money, and they were able to execute on that at the highest level to create that level of growth. Really impressive. These two guys are someone to look to and really model from, because I believe that they think about the product, they think about the customer, they think about sales, but they also think about aligning the team around that and how important that is across the entire company so they can scale forward. I've had a good time getting to know them. Hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I've enjoyed doing it and providing it to you. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.